read out of this book, Flight, about Charles Lindbergh. Today we're going to look back into this story to determine some important ideas that readers could take from it from different sections of the book. So as I'm reading, you need to be thinking about what is the most important thing that happened in this passage of the story. We'll do the first one together, but make sure you're listening and thinking about what is the most important thing that happened in this part of the story. It is 1927, and his name is Charles Lindbergh. Later they will call him the Lone Eagle. Later they will call him Lucky Lindy, but not now. Now it is May 20th, 1927, and he is standing in the still dark dawn. He watches rain drizzle down on the airfield and on his small airplane. The airplane has a name painted on its side, Spirit of St. Louis. Lindbergh is nearly as tall as the plane itself, and yet he is about to attempt what no one has done before, to fly without a stop from New York to Paris, France, over 3,600 miles away, across the Atlantic Ocean, alone. I want us to stop right here and think, what is the most important thing that has happened so far in the story? To me, the most important idea in the story so far is that Charles Lindbergh is about to accomplish something or attempt to accomplish something that no one has ever done before, fly across the Atlantic Ocean from New York to Paris, France. Let's continue reading to see if we can find out any other important ideas. He climbs into the box-like cockpit that will be his only home for many, many hours. He clicks on the engine. He listens as it catches, gurgles, and roars. A few friends are here to say goodbye. They are only a few feet away, and yet to Lindbergh, how far off they seem. They look up at him and wave, "Good luck. Keep safe." A telephone wire stretches across the far end of the field. To touch this wire will plunge the plane to the ground. There's an extra fuel tank in front of the cockpit. Because of this, Lindbergh cannot see straight ahead. Will the Spirit of St. Louis, with its over 5,000 pounds, rise into the air? To keep the plane lighter, Lindbergh is leaving behind his radio and parachute. Will that be enough? He has been up all night getting ready. A thought runs back and forth through his mind. It is still possible to turn back, to return home. And yet another thought is stronger. I have been waiting my entire life for this flight. Lindbergh lowers his goggles and nods his head. Go. Men on each side push to help the plane roll over the soggy ground. The little plane bumps forward, gaining speed. The wheels leave the ground, then touch back. The plane seems to hop, taking its last bow to earth. And on the third try, it stays aloft. It soars above the wire by only 20 feet. The Spirit of St. Louis rises in the air. It is 7:52 in the morning, New York time. Lindbergh points his plane toward the Atlantic and beyond, toward Paris, over 30 hours away. I want you to think for a moment, what do you think is the most important idea or most important thing that happened just in those short few pages? I'm going to give you a few seconds to think. To me, the most important idea is that Lindbergh was very scared to take off. He was in this tiny plane, and he had to have men push it, and there was a electrical wire very close overhead. But yet he still went on and did it. He still went on to live and try to accomplish his dream. Now, this next section, you are going to try to figure out what the most important thing is in this section of the text. He gazes down in the morning light. How far off Paris seems, across the long ocean. He plans to follow the coastline, flying northeast. The land's edge looks to him like green fingers, pointing at the dark sea. To see ahead, Lindbergh pokes a small homemade periscope out of the side of the cockpit. Sometimes he flies very close to the water, just 10 feet above the waves. He knows that at this low height, the plane glides more smoothly. The plane drones on. It cruises at about 100 miles an hour. At this rate, he will have enough fuel to reach his destination, but only if he stays on course. Beside him in the cockpit is a little book. He keeps a diary as he goes, all day long, hour by hour. It's as if he were speaking to himself. He wants to remember everything, because no one else will really ever know. At 12:08, he flies above Nova Scotia. Just after 4, he flies above the coast of Newfoundland. At dusk, he looks down and sees icebergs. In his diary, he calls them white pyramids, white patches on a blackened sea, centuries of the Arctic. He wonders what lies ahead. The sun sets far behind the plane. Lindbergh flies over St. John's, Newfoundland, the last point of land in North America. Now he can no longer follow the land's edge for direction. He must chart his course carefully. The slightest movement could send him miles off course and risk the fuel supply. He follows 2 compasses and the stars to navigate. As long as the sky is clear, he is safe. But he must stay awake. He writes, "Now I must cross not 1, but 2 oceans, one of night and one of water." Time passes slowly. It is almost 9 o'clock at night. Lindbergh's 13th hour in the air. He has completed 1/3 of the flight. I want you to think, what is the most important thing to understand and remember in the part that I just read? What is the most important thing to understand and remember in the part that I just read? Go ahead and give that a few seconds of thought. Okay, we're going to read just a little bit more now, and I want you to again think about what is the most important thing to understand and remember in this passage of the story. He moves through dense, curling fog, lit ghostly white by the moon. He suddenly enters a huge storm cloud. The plane shimmers, moving up and down in the uniform blackness. He wonders, can I fly above it? Slowly, he soars to 10,500 feet. Here it is, clear, but very, very cold. He extends his arm outside the cockpit and feels stinging pinpricks. He clicks on his small flashlight and peers out. Heavy ice is formed on the plane's wings. He cannot risk his instruments icing up. He points the Spirit of St. Louis back down. The wings quiver as they slice through the turbulent air. The fog continues, but now at least the air is warmer. The ice begins to melt, and Lindbergh roars ahead, through the fog and clouds, to Paris over 2,000 miles away. Space and time, and deep, deep darkness. It is the other side of midnight, the loneliest hours. Lindbergh has been awake for almost 50 hours straight. He is closer to Europe than America. Now there is no turning back, only moving forward. He dozes for a minute and then jerks awake. One of the plane's wings is dipping crazily. In a sudden rush of fear, he grabs for the throttle. He gropes for the steady center with his heart pounding. As he feels the leveling wings, he lets out breath. He repeats over and over to himself, "I must not sleep. I must not sleep." Here, high above the churning ocean, to sleep is to die. One last time, I want you to think, what is the most important thing to remember and understand about that section of the text? Make sure you have answered each question during the video. And if you have any questions, please let me know at the end of the video, and I will get those later.